What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and okay, I have a bunch of thoughts related to like a few particular events that are all kind of sort of related. Let me start with, the main thrust of what I'm talking about, and really all of it has kind of come to a head surrounding the most recent Grammy Awards show and a specific song mostly known as W.A.P. I dare not say what the actual full title of it is. But, yeah, the fact that was shown and performed at the Grammys when it is a wildly inappropriate for young ages song, despite the Grammys being something that is very widely broadcast and viewed and, all that kind of stuff. And first off, regarding that specifically, yeah, I kind of agree that it's not good or appropriate for something like that to be shown on such a broad scale. Like, were this like the MTV Music Awards or something that had like something that was not on generally public television, it might be a little more okay, but even then, the song itself is completely deplorable in so many ways. How in the world it even merited enough popularity to be performed at the Grammys is beyond me. And I think it's just a testament to the idea that data and, view counts and things like that do not necessarily equal popularity. But that's what data assumes. That's what view counts assume, that, just because something has been viewed this many times, which is a lot, that must mean that it's popular and people like it. No, controversy is not the same as popularity. And that's where we have problems with our kind of data-based internet society. We need to separate, or be able to somehow separate, controversy from popularity. Because if we assume that something that has been widely viewed because of controversy is actually something that's popular when it's not, but we assume that it's popular because of the numbers, and we continue promoting it and pushing it into broader culture, that like, first of all, it'll only continue to increase the numbers on that if we push it into the broader culture. Again, possibly more so because of controversy than popularity. But, like, more people will come across it. It'll get more hits, view counts, data points, whatever. And it just becomes a little bit of this snowball effect kind of thing that I've had a problem with regarding YouTube and other basically algorithmic viewing platforms and data points and recommendations. So, yeah, the reason that song got so many views in the first place was because of controversy, not popularity. We need to be able to separate these things. But anyway, on the slight flip side, not necessarily the reverse argument, because I still don't think that should have ever been displayed. Some outside source needs to say, okay, this is not appropriate for a widely viewed program. But anyway, people are, just completely ranting against the song in general because of it being so inappropriate, and I'll agree it's inappropriate for, basically slap a rated M thing on there. That's why I've talked about needing, like, rating systems for music, but nobody seems to give a care about that. The thing that kind of runs as a slight counter argument. I'm not going to say that, this is me playing devil's advocate against myself here, in a sense. But it's not necessarily the opposite argument saying that, yeah, this is appropriate, this is okay to put in a broadly televised program. But regarding the general outcry against this song and saying that the song as a whole should basically be canceled or whatever, like, stuff like this, even wildly inappropriate things, have been in music for a long time, even in kind of popular music for a long time. Just listen to, like, any significant selection of AC/DC songs. Like, half of their stuff is just riddled with double entendre, and I would argue that just because it's double entendre doesn't necessarily make it more appropriate than what is overtly and obviously inappropriate. But that's maybe just my opinion, because, there could be other conversations had to the point of, well, it's not obvious, so, they don't actually mean this thing. They actually mean this other thing that's just totally fine and appropriate, not this other thing that, while yes, the double meaning would assume that, don't assume the double meaning, get your mind out of the gutter. But anyway, there have been songs for quite a while about, like, sex, drugs, alcohol, abuse, murder, all sorts of different things like that. And, like, to be honest, some of those have been called into question in the past, but not necessarily to the extent very often that, the recent discussion has, elevated it. And in some ways, I wonder if we need to reevaluate some of this stuff. Again, cue my thoughts regarding, like, music rating systems. But realistically speaking, we can't just rant against this most recent occurrence. Like, don't pretend this is something new, because it's not. Should it have been widely televised? Heck no. Should it be completely banished, from the collective memory of society? Not really any more so than, like, probably 10% of all the songs in existence. So, like, Like, I get the outrage over it being broadly nationally televised, but I don't get the outrage of saying that, oh, this song is so ridiculous and it, is completely inappropriate. We should just, like, banish it to the depths. No. I mean, there are things all over culture that are designed for broader, only mature audience consumption. And, realistically, I wouldn't rail on one specific instance of it over and against so many others that exist. But anyway, yeah, so those are kind of my broader thoughts related to that specifically. But of course, people have been comparing it to other things that have recently been canceled and saying, like, oh, why in the world are we canceling Pepe le Pew and not W.A.P? Or things like that. And first of all, cancel culture is, I think, already getting a little bit misunderstood, despite the fact that it is only a recent term, or it has certainly only recently entered the spotlight as a popular term to use. And I think where the difference comes in is that just because a person or company is deciding to end something that is not necessarily the same thing as cancel culture. Cancel culture is typically the broader society, or at least a large subsection of broader society, saying that this is ridiculous, we need to get rid of it, or even more specifically, this person needs to be just banished from all semblance of popularity because they've done XYZ in the past. That's really more so the whole cancel culture thing. It's more like, I'll just give an example of like Amber Heard. You know, people saying that, oh, she shouldn't get any acting work anymore because she was so nasty and ridiculous to people in the past. Specifically, Johnny Depp seems to be the main thing. That is an example of cancel culture, saying that a person, because of prior actions, should essentially never be allowed into the spotlight again. And where I think that goes wrong is that it completely removes any possibility of redemption. So that cancel culture is not the same thing as just saying, all right, let's put an end to this particular character or product or song or something like that. Cancel culture is more specifically against people, actual living human beings, not just, you know, something that has been created by people. But anyway, kind of in that thought process, I mean, look, again, I'm not making any excuses for W.A.P. I think it's wildly inappropriate, never should have been displayed in a broadly televised setting. But ultimately, like, it was a decision, maybe a business decision, you would say, or whatever. And these things with, say, certain few Dr. Seuss books or Pepe le Pew or whatever, essentially no longer being available, that's not necessarily the same thing as what cancel culture actually is. That's a business decision, yet again, saying that, okay, we're going to stop putting this thing out there. And, you know, if they would just say nothing as to why that, you know, these things are being stopped, then I don't think anybody would have an issue with it. Unless there was just assumed general cultural outcry against these things, then we'd still hear the, oh, it's cancel culture, you shouldn't do this, keep Pepe le Pew, and things like that we're currently hearing. But really, I mean, like, do you want transparency from these companies, or do you want them to just be like, hey, we're doing this thing, it's our decision, just roll with it? No, it's just, like, people want to know why these days. And I think part of what's different with the whole Pepe le Pew, Dr. Seuss kind of thing is that there really wasn't, to my understanding anyway, there really wasn't a significant outcry against these things before they got air quote canceled. Really, the companies surrounding these things just decided to stop producing them, or, you know, producing this content. And, like, if there's not that kind of general outcry from the broader culture, or a large portion of it, then I'm sorry, that's not cancel culture. No. I don't remember hearing people saying, oh, Pepe le Pew is ridiculous, and he's, like, really super rapey, and things like that, before Pepe le Pew got, air quote, canceled. It was, the decision was made, and then people started talking about it, and then people on either side of the argument, like, people who thought Pepe Le Pew should not have been canceled were railing against the other people who were like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I understand. He might have been a little this, that, or the other thing that maybe wasn't great. And, like, it's the people railing against the ones that are kind of defending the decisions after the fact, more so than, you know, people complaining beforehand about a particular character or book or whatever. Like, the complaining has to be more so significant beforehand than afterwards for it to really be cancel culture. If we're actually talking true cancel culture, but taking it beyond just the mere, human usage of it. So, like, ultimately, a lot of these are just business decisions, and I'm not gonna sit here and talk at length about the morality of, certain business decisions or anything like that. Especially really, on the broader sense, small decisions like this. Because, I mean, look, society's messed up. It's been for a long time. The world is sinful. We're all flawed, fallen, human. We do bad things. Even those of us who believe in God do bad things. We shouldn't be surprised when other people who don't believe in God do bad things. So, like, I don't know. I'm not going to say I completely, condemn the outrage by any means. I'm not going to say I completely disagree with even people's reactions to some of these situations. Like, honestly, I mean, I watched some cartoons with Pepe Le Pew as a kid. I really didn't care much one way or the other. Dr. Seuss books, I don't know if I ever even read the ones that are I don't know if they're even getting canceled. I think they're just ending production to try and go back, maybe reword some things so they seem less, racist or whatever they might be. So they seem more sensitive, I guess, or whatever. I don't really think it's a big deal one way or the other, but there's a broad, counter cancel culture movement that, pretty much anything that seems to be coming to an end these days, people just assume that it's cancel culture, and then the counter cancel culture chimes in and rails against it. And I don't think it's that cut and dry, black and white in a lot of these instances. And I don't know. I don't get what all the fuss is about, I suppose, is my main line of thinking. People almost seem to want to rail against cancel culture because they're saying it's, against the idea of free speech. And while I kind of get the intention there, a lot of these things that are being railed against as part of, cancel culture, they're business decisions. And, if you want to talk about freedom of speech and decision making and all that kind of stuff, then guess what? That's freedom there as well. So, trying to say people shouldn't do certain things that they did of their own free will because of, a certain cultural movement that you assume is part of it when really it isn't. That, yes, while that cultural movement may be, diminishing free speech and things like that, or at least kind of going against the idea, I don't know. There's a whole lot of stuff that, honestly, I could argue circles around for days. But the broader fact of the matter is, a bunch of people are getting outraged over a bunch of little things because there's an assumption that, oh, it's a broader cultural movement that's, turning us away from ideal X or Y, or like, moral standard X or Y. Different things like that. And, I mean, look, ultimately, culture is not going to follow your expectations, be they religious or not. People do things. They're going to do what they want. And, like, why would you waste your time, your effort, your breath getting upset over these things that other people are doing when really they, don't even have any effect on you? If they have a significant effect on you, yeah, okay. If it's a broader, political or cultural thing that is obviously causing significant damage to the masses, okay, yes, speak out against that. Rail against those decisions and policies and different things like that. If it's affecting you personally, okay, yeah, talk about how it's affecting you personally and why that's bad. But don't just assume because there's some broader cultural movement that people are either caught up in or railing against, that you need to insert yourself into the middle of that conversation and say this is right or wrong for these reasons. I mean, I guess I shouldn't even say, don't insert yourself into those conversations, because conversation, yeah, fine. But don't get, outraged over it just because there's outrage going on. Again, this is going back to some of what I was saying earlier about how just, controversy and things like that, people get caught up in controversy, they start talking about it, they bring attention to particular things because of controversy. That doesn't necessarily make it more right or more wrong or more popular or anything like that. But this is how a lot of things operate these days. It's how a lot of media outlets operate these days. It's how a lot of the internet operates these days, especially larger internet platforms that, are trying to automate things and use algorithms and data points rather than actual people and, analysis of certain things. It's there's stuff that's wrong with society. There's always been stuff that's wrong with society. There will always be stuff that's wrong with society until Jesus returns and we have a new heaven and new earth and whatnot. So, don't get outraged for no good reason, I suppose, is ultimately the main point. If people would just stop talking about the stuff that other people are talking about just because it's being talked about, then we wouldn't have so much of this snowball effect on so many of these cultural phenomena of the past decade or so. So anyway, yeah. One other minor subpoint that's related to these kinds of things, and it somewhat relates to cancel culture, more so relates to freedom of speech, actually. I was actually helping a student through a history assignment, and it was talking about the first few presidents and some things that they did, things that happened, big things that happened during their presidencies and whatnot. And I think it was when it got to James Monroe that it talked about, it was already within the first few presidents talking about having to pass a law that news outlets, whatever, people could not publish false stories on political figures and things like that. I mean, I'm summarizing, but already, just a few presidents in, we were talking about that kind of stuff. Like, we assume fake news is a new thing. It clearly is not. So, stepping back, like, Solomon had some wise words when he said there's nothing new under the sun. At least I assume that was Solomon. It's in Ecclesiastes, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, yeah, a lot of this stuff that we assume is new and is this thing that is just, you know, being created out of thin air or whatever because current culture is crazy. Culture has always been crazy. Again, there is nothing new under the sun. Nothing that is truly new. So, like, I don't know. Why make such a big fuss over it? Society is what it is. People are going to do what they're going to do. And let's just be who we are or who we want to and or should be. And let's leave it at that without making a big fuss over trying to have other people fit our own standards and expectations. Unless they're, you know, part of the same belief, or supposedly at least part of the same belief system or different things like that, then maybe we can correct people on, you know, things that they should or should not do. But, like, it seems like there's a broad counterculture movement of let's make people fit in this nice, neat, moral box that nobody really is going to fit into completely. Like, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Why do we expect anything else? But yeah, that's kind of the general thought process I have. If you want me to get more specific on any one particular point, or if you have something else that's related or not related that you want me to talk about, leave comments down below. Whatever thoughts you have, let me know. And then, of course, as always, like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe and click the bell to get updates when I post new stuff. Yeah. Again, I welcome discussion, legitimate discussion, not like just outrage and madness. Because that's generally what I'm shooting for here. I don't necessarily expect people to follow my specific moral code or anything like that. I just expect general human decency, really. That's what I'm aiming for. I mean, sure, I personally would like to bring people more into, you know, the Christian thought process and get them to see, you know, the ways of sin and all of that. But, I can't expect everybody to behave like that. So let's just start at human decency and go from there. Anyway, that's it. Yeah. Oh, before I forget, make sure you look down in the description for info on all my social media pages and how to find and follow those. Because I don't think I mentioned that. Anyway, that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you next time for whatever happens to come to mind or whatever other video I put out there. But whatever the case is, whenever you tune in next time, until then, stay cool, people.